My name is Hugh Phillips. I am a veteran of World War II. I was born April the 6th, 1922 at 345 East Hollywood Avenue in Salt Lake City. I wear this hat because it has my plane's name on it. I wear this jacket because it has my patch on it. So I tell my war stories. And then I say, what haven't I told you about? They said, you haven't said anything about tears. Well, let me tell you about tears. I had 3 brothers. One was in Alaska, one was in North Europe, one was in Southern Europe, and I was in the Pacific. That's all the fronts. Now, my father died in 1926, and my mother never married. She raised us, one from just over 15 to one that hadn't had his first birthday yet. She raised all 4 of those boys. How many times, after listening to the news, do you think my mother went to bed without crying? None. Because there was always one of us that was on the front page. And so that's where the tears come in. Blood, sweat, and tears. The first surprise of our life was that my father died in 1926. I had just barely turned 4. Because the police couldn't find any other excuse, they said that it was a suicide, but it couldn't have been a suicide from the way he was found. He was found wrapped in barbed wire. If you're going to kill yourself, you're not going to wrap yourself in barbed wire. So we know that the police just used it as an excuse. Okay, our first raid was to the Mitsubishi aircraft plant at Nagoya, December the 15th, 1944. Gotcha. Anyway, so I'll never forget. We got off there, and the bombardier said, Parsons was the name of our pilot. Parsons, what'll I do with these bombs? And Parsons says, what can you see? And Parsons said, the bombardier said, I can see a small fishing village. That's all I can see down there. And Parsons said, bomb it. So we bombed the fishing village. Do you know what it was like when we got back to our Quonset hut, where we lived, where there were 4 other crews, and we had bombed fish? It was awful to be fish bombers. And so, 5 days later, we went on our second mission. And our second mission was to the same place, but we got there that time. However, as we came off the target, the left gunner went nuts. Literally. He screamed, the airplane's coming apart. Big pieces are falling off. Big pieces can't fall off of airplanes. If big pieces fall off of airplanes, the airplane goes down. Big pieces are falling off. Then he said, Phillips, what's the matter with that engine? I could see it, too. And I looked out, and here were these gray sheets falling off. What are gray sheets on an airplane? Now, I knew aircraft sheet metal. Aircraft sheet metal is shiny on one side and yellow on the other side. That wasn't sheet metal. It had to be oil. So I said, the oil is coming out. Now, the oil on these airplanes,
And could you point out on the plane exactly what wing you were looking at?
the oil on these airplanes was down here, and it was 90 weight oil. I don't know whether you ever saw anybody start a B-29 or not, but if somebody starts a B-29, they walk this around, they walk the propeller around twice. Do you know why?
To get it.
To get the oil up. All right. So anyway, there was. I described that one. He says that's fine. Now what's the matter with engine number 3? Engine number 3. The right gunner looked at it. Said I can't see anything. Now I looked at it and I said I can't see anything. It overheated. We're over Japan. We've got oil coming out of one. We've got one overheated. What do you do?
Can I just ask, what were you told to do if the plane went down?
Ditch.
Right. And you all had parachutes and you all would...
No, we ditched. We dropped the airplane in the water by a submarine. I never saw a parachute. So there we were over Japan, and so the men up front decided that they would let number 1 windmill. That's the one that the left gunner had gone crazy about. We'll let that one windmill in case we have to use it for something. There might be a little oil in it. So in an extreme emergency, we might have to use it. And they feathered number 3. And then we went home. The commanding pilot flew as far as the edge of Japan with us, and then he waved his hand at us and said, and we assumed he was saying, well, we'll see you. But nobody had ever come back, by that time, nobody had ever come back with 2 engines gone. We were the first ones in the world to do it. And so we got back to Saipan, and we looked and we couldn't find the airport because they'd turned the lights off. They figured that we weren't making it back, and so we had the radio in, had them turn on the lights, and then we landed. Incidentally, we never saw the left gunner after that. The pilot grounded him at that point. You couldn't be that type of man and be on an air crew. You had to be a little bit calmer. Now, you're wondering about how many times I went. I went 30 missions from Saipan to Japan. I had young people from my church come and interview me, and one of their standard questions they asked was, how many times did you figure you might die? And I looked at them and I said, 90 times. And they looked at me and said, how did you get the exact number? I said, did you ever take off with an airplane that was overloaded with 80 500-pound bombs on a short runway and not be worried? Did you ever get shot at and not be worried? Then when you got back, was it going to land? And I can bring that one up to you with the greatest raid of all times to talk about that one. The greatest raid, air raid.
So, 1 second.
Every plane came in at a different altitude and at a different heading. 200 miles out of Tokyo, we saw red. that much of Tokyo was burning and we were halfway through the mission. We went over Tokyo, and I guess we weren't the nicest fellows in all the world. Because I can remember I would see a big building burning. And I'd say, "Hey Jim, come see this big fire." And we go a little bit further, and Jim would say, "Hey Hugh, come over and see this big fire. Come over and see this big fire." Actually, we could see the outlines, the little square outlines of every house there. There were 362 B-29s that flew that night. We destroyed 18 square miles, a little bit more, of Tokyo, killed 496,000 people, which is more than both atomic bombs. And then went home. Daddy, get something for me! Get it for nothing!